And we're back with a quick channel update. It's been a while actually. A lot of stuff has happened since the last channel update, so I thought I'd try and cover some stuff because I've been meaning to do one of these for ages. First up, schedule-wise, when it comes to the two current running series they've got, which is the Auction Not Included in Rimworld, I'm trying to finish those out and get out 2 episodes of each a week, but they're really late game, and it's really hard to get them done. It's just they're physically running so slowly on my computer that it takes you're recording for about 12 hours to get get an episode out. So it's usually spread across 2 days making each one, which has just slowed me down to about 3 episodes a week. Just sorry, it's the way it is. In fact, the only reason I've been able to get out as many episodes as I have is because I sort of went part-time on my real-world job. Network engineer by trade, for those of you who don't know. It sort of came down to I was getting burnt out. I've burnt out before doing jobs. I was a little bit dumber when I was younger, and you just work yourself into a hole. And I recognized all the warning signs, so I had a choice of either cutting back on doing the YouTube stuff or cutting back on doing the real-world job stuff. And that's actually a really tricky decision. I know some of you are thinking, oh, God, just go the YouTube direction and all that. I mean, I had a spreadsheet and everything, and I'd worked out the money, and I'm like, yeah, it could work if I go that way. But you still got to remember, there's some crazy stuff about YouTube. Like, you hear those stories of people who literally lose their entire channel over nothing they did wrong. I heard that story about the guy who developed Terraria. It's I don't know if you've ever played Terraria, but a lovely little game. And he got his Google account, banned by Google. And I'm not just talking like his YouTube account. I mean, his Gmail, his Google Docs, everything related to his Google, all of it was just like banned. So he was trying for 2 weeks to get his account back. 2 weeks. And he couldn't actually get it back. He eventually he took to Twitter to try and get it sorted out. And this guy was actually in partnership with Google developing or porting Terraria over to Google Stadia, and he could not get his account unbanned. So there's a little bit of worry about ever, committing yourself to this sort of thing. When it's time for me to make a decision, I like to think about what's the worst thing that could possibly happen and what's the things that I just couldn't live with. And I suppose, like, worst case scenario, YouTube thing fails and I end up going back to my old job, or even if I can't get my old job, I end up, I don't know, stacking nuclear waste in a gulag in Russia somewhere hidden under a sewage plant. That'd be pretty bad. But I think it would be worse would be something giving up on YouTube because, I just didn't have the hours, or the channel failing just because I didn't put the hours into it. And then you got to look at yourself in the mirror every day and realize, hey, you had this dream opportunity and you didn't go for it because you were an absolute pansy. And that, I don't think I could live with that. That would be the kind of thing that would eat away at you. So it wasn't really much of a choice at the end of the day, despite all the possibility of things going bad. I mean, you got to kind of grab onto that with both hands. Worst case scenario, you can at least look back and well, at least I tried. Don't worry, this isn't any sort of fundraiser or anything. I've been part-time for a few months now. Everything's fine. All the numbers are working out. It's all great. There should be no changes. Well, okay, hopefully I should get more done. Well, that's the theory, if I can get my time management under control. I think one of the big reasons, or my favorite thing about YouTube, okay, well, there's a lot of favorite things to have about YouTube, but my favorite things about YouTube as a job is there's no drudge work. There's none of that pointless work that doesn't actually mean anything, but you still have to do it, and it doesn't actually productive in any way. Like everything oh, wait, what's a better explanation? I was working for a telecom once, and one person went on holidays, and I ended up covering their departmental role. And their departmental role was dealing with, unsavory stuff and copyright stuff. One of the things, one part of their job was they would get mails from, movie studios like 20th Century Fox, Paramount, stuff like that, and they would claim stuff like, oh, this person at this IP address is copying our movie, blah, 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 due to whatever litigious reasons, and then there'd be a whole bunch of legalese. It was basically boilerplate stuff. It was an automated system. They would automatically send the mails to us. And the job of this person was they would take this mail and then send a reply going with a copy paste of some more legalese going, yeah, whatever, that doesn't apply here, go away. But in legalese, basically. And then they would log they had done it. But what made it so hilarious was the email was coming from a no-reply email address. So Paramount or whoever would send an email from a no-reply email address, and then we would reply back with our legalese from a no-reply email address. And I presume the two emails just kept bouncing back and forth. I don't know what happened. But then you would actually have to log that you did it. And at the time, I found this hilarious. I just thought it was just like the biggest waste of time ever invented. But now I look back on that and go, God, that is horrible. That is the definition of soul-destroying work. Because you're doing something that literally has no purpose. In fact, you can see why that situation arose. It was because, that crowd started sending the mails. The company goes, okay, what do we do about this? The legal department go, oh, we have to respond and tell them this. Well, they could have probably set up a script to do it. But it was just easier to go, well, we've got someone in this department who's already dealing with similar stuff. They can just, copy paste them a reply. And that person has to waste, whatever, tops 10 minutes of their day copy pasting replies to this and logging that it's done for stuff that will never be seen by anyone. And you're like, wow, that is literally the definition of soul destruction. Imagine if your entire job consisted of that. So my point being, if you had the choice of doing a job, and YouTubing is one of those things where everything I do involved in YouTube pretty much has a purpose and a reason. There's no real drudge work involved. And that's amazing. If you could take a pay cut, but cut out all the drudge work, no, actually, that's the wrong way of thinking about it. Imagine, take your job, whatever you're doing right now, and I know this only really applies to office jobs. If you've ever worked any physical labor jobs like stacking boxes or anything like that, you know that is all literally you spend 100% of your day working. But in office jobs, there's usually just a huge layer of this bureaucratic drudge work somewhere involved. Who's never sat in work counting down the last 10 minutes so that they can check out? That right there, that's drudge work. That's soul destroying. YouTubing doesn't really have that. I mean, maybe you could mix them up, but in generally, the most I could say is when you're uploading the videos and have to fill in a few tick boxes and stuff like that, and it's like, why doesn't it just remember my settings from last time? That would be really handy, but it doesn't do that. But even most of that is still taken care of, so I can't really complain. So I suppose the question is, if you could take your job and, say your job's only 10% drudge work, but for every 5% more drudge work you put in, you could get 5% more pay. So theoretically, you could get 90% more pay if you just made your job entirely drudge work that has no purpose and is not productive in any way. Would you do it? Would you be able to do a job that's literally not productive in any way, but you're getting paid twice as much? I don't know. I don't think I could. I think that would just physically break me. I suppose the takeaway from this is that when I'm finished making a video, I can either go on and start making the next one, or I can actually stop. It doesn't matter the time of day or night, or I can work till 2 a.m. and not stop, or stop at that time if I want. It's an incredible feeling of freedom, and a massive thanks to everyone who made it possible, and even bigger thanks to the patrons. If it wasn't for your contributions, I would not be able to do this, literally. So thank you so much. Since I'm going to be relying on my YouTube income, I need to get a second PC. Don't worry, I've been planning this for ages. It was sort of a case of I needed a faster PC so I could keep doing some of the things we were doing in games. At the same time, I thought, I want to have a second PC so that if the first one breaks down, I have something as a backup to rely upon. It's just my old PCs, normally I give them away to friends or family who usually have terrible PCs, and it would be nice to be able, at least talk to them about games they could potentially play, but will never play, even if I do give them the hardware to do it. But yes, I do need to build a new PC, and I've been holding out for ages because the price of graphics cards, for anyone who's unaware, massive semiconductor shortage at the moment, and graphics cards are ridiculously expensive. I've been keeping an eye on a graphics tracker just to see what the prices are, and yeah, I think I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and start building a PC, no choice about it. However, I thought I would present my ideas to the audience so that they can actually have a look at them because, I'm pretty decent at building a PC, I like to think, but then again, I sometimes think I'm pretty decent at games until the comments point out all the stupid mistakes I make. When it comes to building a gaming PC, people always say, there's a group that will always say, get the one with the massive amount of cores on it, or get the CPU with the massive amount of cores. That doesn't actually help with gaming. When it comes to gaming, you see, most games are still pretty old school and they only really use one of the multiple cores your computer would have. It's just the way they're designed. There is a few games out there that are notable exceptions to this, but by and large, the majority of them only use one core. So what you sort of want to do is get a CPU with very high speeds, and it doesn't matter if it has only 4 cores or 12 or whatever. It's just, the higher the speed of that one core is what's going to carry you over. That's why Rimworld is CPU limited by a single core. Same with Oxygen Not Included, same with Factorio. A lot of those games, they're all limited by one CPU core, which is why you're better off aiming for something with higher speeds and less cores. Just something to note. I'll put up all the specs of what I'm looking to buy is on the screen. The most painful one is going to be the graphics card. To get your hands on a 3060 Ti, you're looking about 740-ish. It used to be about 700 up until a few weeks ago, but the prices just keep going up, which is why I kind of got to buy soon. Otherwise, I'm going to have just one PC, and I'm worried that something will break, and then I won't be able to do anything. Like most incredibly lazy people, I got most of that spec from Logical Increments. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, but once someone showed me Logical Increments, it made things so much simpler. It used to be, back in the olden days, we'd have to figure out, okay, which processor to pair with which motherboard and all sorts of... No. You someone else does all that work now, and then you just, go and look up their spreadsheets and figure out what you should do. It makes life an awful lot simpler. I am just back from my holidays there last week, and it was wonderful, of course. Some people were wondering why I was shipping whiskey back from Portugal with me, or putting whiskey in my bags. Ireland has the highest tariffs on on wine in all of Europe. We have the second highest on beer and the third highest on spirits after, I think it's Finland and Norway. Well, it's been a while since I checked. But that means I could say buy a bottle of Tullamore Dew in Portugal for cheaper than I could buy it in the Irish town of Tullamore where it's made. So it's cheaper for me to buy Irish whiskey in another country because of the sheer amount of tariffs on spirits in Ireland. It's kind of crazy. So every bottle of whiskey I buy in Portugal, I can save like about somewhere between 10 to 14 euros per bottle, which means if you're on holidays, you're like, hey, I can bring back a couple of bottles. And then you actually go onto the Irish Citizen Information website and you're like, wait a minute, I can bring back 10 litres of spirits? 10? That seems a little high. Turns out that's not the highest one. If you want, you can bring in 90 litres of wine. Now, I mean, I've had the odd glass of wine now and then. I'm just trying to imagine, though, who would have a suitcase big enough to fit 90 litres of wine? I don't know if you've ever heard of a goon bag, but a goon bag is basically box wine, and it's got a foil bag inside of it holding wine, usually about 4 litres. But I'm trying to imagine, like, even if you had nothing but just a giant bag full of wine, what kind of suitcase would have that? It would be a goon suitcase, or a suitcase full of whatever. I just don't see that happening. And the crazy thing is, you're only allowed to bring in, what was it? I think it's 800 cigarettes, or 800 cigarettes or something like that. It's crazy the limitations they've put on things. But it seems a little bit excessive that you can bring in 10 litres of spirits. The only thing that got me was I only had a 23 kilo allowance on my bags. I thought I had 30. So then when I was getting bottles, I'm like, I stopped at about 7 because I was like, I was probably going to be pushing the limits. Someone recommended I bring a luggage weighing thing with me next time so that I can weigh the bag. You know, that actually sounds like a wonderful idea because I actually had 3 kilos of extra space and I definitely could have taken a few extra bottles. Oh, and don't worry, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not going to drink them all in the next month or two. This thing is going to be spread out over time. It's not like whiskey goes off. That's the wonderful thing about, buying whiskey. It's like if you find a good deal or you find someplace you can get it cheap, it's like, yeah, I can just leave that in the press. It's not going to go off anytime soon. Plus, actually, there is that sort of downside to it. When you've got this much whiskey, it's like every time you go out to someone's house for a party or something like that, you always end up bringing a whole bottle. And then everyone goes, that's very nice. And then suddenly it's gone. Yeah, maybe don't be as generous with whiskey. Actually, no. Whiskey's for sharing. The place in Portugal where I actually bought all these whiskies, it actually had a whiskey museum in it, which was very odd. I'd never seen one of those before. But one section was all these sort of old toy-looking things. And it turns out these were all things they used to put whiskey in back in the day. They were like novelty things that you could buy that had whiskey in them. I think it was mostly Jack Daniels. Not really my speed, but, that was mildly interesting. It was more interesting, though, is behind that they had actual bottling collections, as in, here's the first edition of, say, a bottle of Connemara, and that stuff there is like the original bottle was a completely different shape and all sorts of things. It was just interesting to see how they'd evolved over time. If you're ever in Lisbon, go look the place up. I think it's called Whiskey and Co. Wonderful little thing to stumble upon if you're one of those people who really likes their whiskey. I think that was actually a pretty concise update. We actually covered the games are a little bit slow right now because the PC can't keep up with them because, we took it too far. And in fact, I'm pretty sure even when I do get my hands on a faster PC, we all know that I'm still just going to keep pushing it further until the computer gets really slow anyway. So even if I do get a faster PC, I'll just be in the same boat, just with a slightly bigger colony. But, you can hope, you can try. Also, minor bit of a life change by, but going part-time at the job. That was, that was a little bit of a deal. But more importantly, we are well stocked with whiskey to keep me going for the foreseeable future. If anyone has any good ideas for the PC I'm trying to build, just maybe chuck them in the comments, or you can email me. The address is in the About section of the channel. And with that, I think we are all caught up. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed and good luck.